Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, where in today's video, I'm going to take you through how to pass your ACCA SBR exam, going through the June mock examination, specifically question number 2, exam technique and masterclass session. My name is James, I'm an ACCA qualified member, and I help students around the world to pass their ACCA exams. So if that sounds like something of interest to you, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, because I'm going to take you through in this one, if you stay till the end, all of my insights about how to analyse the requirement, scenario and exhibits, then going on to planning and laying out your answer, and then actually reviewing the details of the answer that the ACCA provide on their practice platform. Now, why am I going through question number 2 specifically? Well, we know it actually relates to an ethics style question. They have to test ethics, and it's always in question number 2. So what some ACCA students, and especially the ones I teach and mentor, we recommend that we go to question number 2 first, because as you can see, we need 50 marks to pass the examination. Students are generally quite good on ethics questions. They've probably done their ethics and professional skills module, tested on ethics in previous exams, and as you can see on the mock exam, 10 marks were tested for requirement B and another 2 marks were awarded for professional skills here. So we're going to take you through those 3 key areas, but as well, what I've got for you, and to take advantage, if you are doing the SBR exam, feel free to check out the link in the description of this video, where you can access a free SBR mock exam and debrief video on behalf of Astranti, where they also have on offer some savings as well if you were to actually access any of their other mocks and debrief videos. If you're more of a book kind of person, maybe you need one for commuting, check out the link to BPP, who have kindly offered students who watch my channel up to 30% off if you use, in this case, BPP30James, or if that code has been used, check out James BPP20 to get 20% off your materials and get the bundle pack with questions and going through the key topic areas, which, as you imagine, ethics is definitely on there. So now let's get into, when this comes up on the exam for an ethics question, how should you go about it? Well, first of all, it's going to the requirement. That is the fundamental straight away. And because we know ethical issues are coming up, the next thing you have to say is which exhibits does it relate to. So you can see on here that it's exhibits 1 and 2, but requirement A is only exhibit 1. So the main focus we're going to be looking on is exhibit 2, picking out, because we're asked to discuss ethical issues arising from BIMAL's instructions to SHAMI and explain how SHAMI should proceed. So those are the key things as to, first of all, discussing those issues and then proceeding. So that is the action part. We've got 10 marks on here, so at 1.8 minutes per mark, that's 18 minutes, plus the 2 for the professional skills, that's another 3.6 minutes, just over 20. That includes to review the requirements, get our answer down, and put down enough points. So when you're saying about 10 marks, I would be saying at least minimum 4, pushing 5 decent points that we need to get down. But I'm going to show you how to lay out your actual answers as well. So now that we've gone through the requirement, we know what we're looking for. Really, we've got to go to is the actual first exhibit. Now this is where, or shall I say the second exhibit on there, because we know it's definitely relating to ethics. Now, as you're going through it step by step, and feel free to check out the question yourself, you can have a look at it on the practice platform. What we're looking for here, and the way you should go about it, is for every sentence, there could be an issue that relates to ethics. So as you read through, the exam technique I always used to put into practice as a student was, for every sentence, was there something that related, in this case, to ethics? And also the key things for your notes is, who is BIMAL and who is SHAMI? So BIMAL is the finance director in this company, ACCA qualified. He has returned to work after an extended period of leave, and he has sent the following email to SHAMI, the finance manager. We're also told at the bottom that SHAMI is also, you can see down here, an ACCA qualified accountant. So both are bound by the ACCA Code of Ethics. Again, alarm bells that we need to be applying, the likes of integrity, professional competence and due care. So if we had to go through what Shami's written to BIML in relation to and respect to the sale and leaseback agreement, I think we should assume that the missing emissions target in 2007 was unusual, and since Westside was constructed in accordance with the guidelines, the target is highly likely to be met in all other years. I believe that meeting this highly likely threshold means that you should recognise the leaseback liability based on the future lease payments of 1.25 million per year rather than 1.4 million. So what they're saying there in layman's terms is they've been going through these sustainable guidelines and they've been putting actions into place, and we should recognise it at 1.25 million on their BIML rather than having to put through a higher cost of 1.4. But as you can see, it's only highly likely that they've been met. It's looking like in one of the years they've not met the threshold and therefore should not recognise it at 1.25 million, but it should be recognised at 1.4. So the alarm bell should be ringing there in terms of the objectivity being brought into question for BIML, the judgment they're going to have to do. And we're also told, remember, in the actual requirement that we've got to be considering on here that for the 2 professional marks as well, the relevance of the ethical issues, so identifying them there, and also the actions identified and the clarity of discussion. So the actions refer to explain how Shami should proceed on there. So if we come back to that internal email, and this is where you might actually get an individual who is ACCA qualified, where we have things like an intimidation threat, and what you need to do is go through line by line, and I like to call them buzzwords that you pick out to say, that's a good point there that I can refer to, that's a good point that I can refer to. And what I've done for you here is a bit like Ready Steady Cook. Here's one I prepared earlier. When we come on to this, the first key thing to help you going from one tab to another, which you haven't got time in the exam, is that you can actually copy across the requirement so you can keep seeing it on the actual word processor. That's going to save you time. And these are my little buzzwords that you can quite easily copy and then Control B, Control U on there and use headings to direct the examiner to how you're going to be shaping your marks. So if you have a look through the actual requirement, some of the areas I got down was intimidation threat, linking to the ethical principle of objectivity, recognizing those carbon emissions, the 1.4 payment versus the 1.2, and being specific to the years, trying to get into a more beneficial position, overlooking faithful representation, so misleading different stakeholder groups, and you can see where your answer would go underneath. We're talking about ACCA qualified individuals, so professional competence and due care, keeping up to date with the relevant standards, and it's an ongoing issue because it's for a number of years. There are other factors in terms of costs and compliance, maybe things like fines or lawsuits as a result, and they're always good go-to ethical area of if you're in doubt and you're worried about the valuation of something, or if there is an issue, getting a third party or independent valuation or an external party to have another look at it will provide some assurance with the sort of last line of actually maybe getting in contact with the professional body of ACCA, or maybe the audit committee, the board of directors, leaning on the expertise and the seniority of other members in the organisation. Not to give away some of the answers, which would be quite good to have. But you can see on here, that is a nice layout as to, these are my little buzzwords that I went through when I was reading through the requirement, underline it, and then you'd put your answer at the bottom there. Now, when it comes to your answers, this is a key bit for exam technique and making sure you stick to time. In order to meet the requirements, which we'll come on to in the answer review in a moment, your answer per point, so under each heading, it's going to equate to, give or take, about 2 marks or so per area. And in order to gain the first mark, that is in the first 1 to 2 sentences, depending on how long and detailed yours are, but definitely do not write more than 4 sentences. And they are 4 short and concise sentences straight to the point. The first 2 should all be about discussing that ethical issue, in this case, intimidation threat, questioning the objectivity, of Bimal's instructions to Shami. That is the relevance applied to the scenario. If you do not apply to the scenario in the SBR exam, you will not pass. Notice as well, I'm using the names of the individuals and the company name. Sentences 3 and 4 is all about explaining how Shami should proceed, the actions, and that's where you can refer to maybe in the objectivity, or maybe they're being intimidated, reporting this to potentially an audit committee, other members of the board, or potentially ACCA's actual ethics committee, or getting in touch with ACCA for advice. These are practical things that happen in the workplace that you should be advising. And applying that technique of 4 sentences max, the first 2 for relevance, the next 2 for actions. If you're to do this for each area, you will fit it in the required time and answer the full 12 marks with those professional skills embedded within your answer on there. So in order to get the full 10, 5 very good marks on there. And that approach of going through and analysing, again, goes to analysing and going through Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, but all I've done there is just go through it one by one, trying to pick out what are the grey areas, what are the areas of risk, and applying it back to the company. That is what it is all coming down to in terms of analysing it and then planning out your answer. So now let's come on to the answer review and how we can put that into practice. And this is a key bit for your notes, writing to a specific standard of answer. So if we were to look at the marking guidelines here for Gilliam Co., key bits for you to get down in your notes is that discussion we talked about in the first 2 sentences, the application to the scenario. Again, applying about the individual's names and also the company. For ethical principles, there were up to 8 marks and the actions on there for 4. So this is what Shami needs to be putting into practice on there. And when we actually review the answers now and coming on to the professional and ethical issues question, when you review it through, it follows that guideline we talked about, the first couple of sentences referring to Shami and Bimal. So you can look at the first one on there, talking about that the email that Shami sent. Bimal suggests that the emissions targets set by the lessor will be met for future years. However, his only basis for this assertion is that Westside was built in accordance with these guidelines in the past. So we're stating the relevance, we're linking it into an ethical issue of what one of the individuals is being asked to do. Bimal's instructions to Shami appears to be driven by desire to meet the bank covenants, in other words, recognising the lower amount, and therefore we've got the actions here, regardless of whether the emission targets are actually met. It suggests a lack of integrity and objectivity, not following the correct standards, as well as poor professional judgment. So these bits in underlined and coloured in yellow, I'd highly recommend that you get down on there as key things for your notes. And I've just underlined some of the areas, and it's the part underlined in red is all about applying your SBR knowledge and being specific to the scenario. So they talked here about the lease liability should be recognised based on the payments of 1.25 million per year. And then when we're told about Bimal's professional competence in the question, is it being regarded in a high standard? We can actually state it and be bold in your answer. Say that they have not maintained the technical knowledge during the period of leave to keep them up to the standard what the stakeholder groups of this organisation are expecting. Other areas that they touched on in the answers refer to some of the actual standards you can see, so the general requirements for disclosure, and being actually, again, bold on saying about the type of greenwashing is unethical. They're trying to portray the company in a better light, controversial on there, and it links into that code of ethics again of integrity that is being undermined. Other areas for you to get down that the examiner would love for you to talk about in your answers and can come up in other ethical questions you will see in your practice packs is the risks associating with it, overriding the ethical issue on there, reflecting on it and not going into enough detail, bridging any knowledge gap through a focused training. So the bits at the bottom here again are linking into the actions that need to be taken so to mitigate this risk so it isn't actually accounted for incorrectly. We've got about retaining a record of all conversations, so there is an audit trail if anything was to come to light. Contacting that ACCA helpline, seeking advice, linking to the audit committee, board of directors on there. You could raise it in a specific meeting on there. All of these are key areas in terms of actions that could be taken in terms of what SHAMI should do about raising concerns for BIMAL's apparent lack of integrity on there. A final thing, as you can see from the answers, they are very direct. There is no sitting on the fence. You have to demonstrate your knowledge, applying it back to the scenario, and that is what is going to be the difference in you getting the marks and starting off your SBR exam on a really good foot. That you can see on here, if you were to apply this, you're going to be getting up on those really good marks, and that is what is going to separate you from picking up on the best marks for this exam. So what we're getting at here, just to come back to that original requirement, is you've got 12 marks here for the ethical question, and because it's 12 marks or so, you're looking at about 20 or so minutes. That 20 or so minutes into your exam, if you've done enough ethical questions and got a lot of exam practice in, you should be looking at maybe 10 already. So when you need 50 on a difficult exam that has a 50% pass rate, getting 10 marks or so in the bank about half an hour into your exam is a pretty good way of going, and an exam technique that I would recommend. And that takes you through my requirement, scenario and exhibit analysis of the question 2 ethics question for the June 2025 mock examination, taking into account that planning and layout and the answer review, showing you that specific standard that if you apply in your exam, you're going to bank those marks and you're going to be well on the way to passing your SBR exam. I'd also like to thank as well Astranti for offering the mock exams. If you want to take advantage of those BPP discounts, check out the links in the description of this video. I will put them there. Check them out, and also best of luck with your exam. So be sure to like this video, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any other videos on the channel, and I'll see you on the other side now for another SBR video. So thank you very much.